Well, good morning, man. This is Bill. Since you're watching me on your device, that means we're not being able to have breakfast. So I am apologizing for that. I don't know how this virus dares interrupt my schedule for these breakfasts, but it has, again. But since we're apart, I would like to give you just a word of encouragement, because I think we could all use it these days. We're faced with all of these constant pressures and stresses that come from dealing with the unknown, dealing with the issues associated with this virus. The important thing for us to realize, and what I really want us to kind of think about for a few minutes, is the fact that if you're a man of God and if you're filled with the Spirit of God, this stuff cannot constrain you. You cannot be stopped. God's going to allow us to accomplish what we're supposed to do. In fact, He's going to use this circumstance, I believe, to do some really cool things, to do some things that we wouldn't have done otherwise. As I was thinking about this, I was looking at the Apostle Paul, and it's interesting to note that in the book of Acts, it talks about how he and Silas got thrown in jail, and we know the story of the Philippian jailer. But if you think about the day they had, there they were doing the will of God, doing good things. They were seeing people delivered, seeing people converted. I mean, they were getting it. They were getting things done. But then all of a sudden the crowd turns, and instead of a good day, it turns into a really ugly day. And suddenly, instead of seeing people converted, now they're getting a beating. It says they were taken before a magistrate, had their clothes ripped off, beaten with rods, thrown in jail. And then finally they get to the jail, and the Philippian jailer finishes them off by putting them in leg stocks. And so that was the end of what you would think would be a really bad day. But for Paul, what seemed to be bad circumstances could always get worse. And in this case, if you think about it, what happened next? Earthquake. So even after all that, they're in jail and an earthquake strikes. And so in human reasoning, the way we approach things, we see circumstances getting worse and worse and worse, pressures getting greater and greater and greater. Must be something wrong, must be something out of the ordinary. But what is really happening is the circumstances are being set up by which God could show Himself strong. And in that particular case, of course, after the earthquake, instead of complaining about all of the issues about that day, God did something great through Paul and Silas. And not only did the Philippian jailer get saved, Bible says that he took them home, he fed them, he cleaned up their wounds. So what appeared to be a total catastrophe, what appeared to be something completely disastrous from the point of view of Paul and Silas, was completely turned around by the fact that God showed up, and not only did He save the Philippian jailer, the guy became a servant to Paul and Silas. He started working for them. So this is the kind of thing I want us to think about, because we're not constrained by our circumstances. What seems to be a disaster can be turned around very quickly by God and make it something good. And that's what I want us to think about in the circumstances we're in. If you go to the end of Acts, the same thing happens again. Paul's been arrested. He's on his way to Rome. What happens? Shipwreck. There he is, again, fighting for his life, swims up onto the shore, and they survive the shipwreck. They start getting organized. Paul tries to light a fire. What happens? Snake bite. So the circumstances can always get worse and worse and worse, and we can't complain about those, because what's really going on is God's orchestrating things so that something good can happen. One of the key verses that we always use is Proverbs 19:21. There are many plans in a man's heart, but it's God's purpose that will prevail. And I want us to really latch onto that right now. There's many purposes and plans out there on behalf of men, but God's doing something, and He's doing something important for you and I to find ourselves in right now. And I would even go beyond that. I said, there are many plans in the devil's heart. Think about how he's trying to manipulate events right now, how he's trying to interject himself into what is already a disastrous situation. I mean, think about it. You watch TV for 5 minutes, it makes you embarrassed to even be a man. Here are these news commentators and politicians whining, complaining, wetting their pants over this virus and what are we going to do, and all this endless wailing and whining. That's not what we're supposed to do. No matter how bad the circumstances get, no matter how frustrating things get, you and I know that God is eventually going to turn this around to do something great. He's not constrained by our circumstances, so I don't want us to be. I just want you to know, man, I'm feeling this. I really am. As I've been thinking about this the last couple weeks, I want you to get this in your hearts, that whatever the circumstances are, no matter how bad they get, God is not constrained by that. You can still accomplish what God's called you to do. And so I want to pray now, and like I said, I'm really feeling this. If I was there, I'd lay hands on you, because I want you to get this. I want you to not only be encouraged, but I want you to see what's happening now as an opportunity to do something, to stretch some muscles that you haven't used before, to develop some skills that you haven't used before, and to allow God to do something new that maybe you haven't ever thought that he would do. So let me pray for you now, and let's just believe that God's going to do something great. God, I thank you for these men. I wish we were together, but even though we're not, I believe, Father, that you're going to touch each one of these guys wherever they are, whatever their circumstances, whatever they're feeling, whatever the emotions. I believe, God, that you can reach right down into their lives, into their families, into their circumstance, and do something great in their lives, Father. I pray for all of those dreams, all of those visions, all those hopes that have been buried under years of frustration and fear and just all of the things that happen in life. I pray you'll release these guys now, Lord, to do something new, to do something great in the kingdom of God. We love these men, Father, and I want them blessed. I want you, Father, I just believe for you to move in their hearts and move in their lives and do something great. So thank you, guys. I appreciate the fact that you've been so faithful to the men's ministry, and you got this promise. I don't know what next month's going to be, but if I have to load up to-go boxes for everybody and bring it to your house, we're going to have some breakfast next month, and I'll see you then. Bye.